Hi, I'm Charlotte Wietema and I'm the Simon Sainsbury Curatorial Fellow here at the National Gallery. And today I'll be talking about this captivating painting, Cupid Complaining to Venus, which was painted by the German artist Lucas Cranach in around 1526 and 1527. And I'll be exploring the question, why is this little angel covered in bees? And what does that tell us about myths and their meaning? When Lucas Cranach painted this picture, he was the leading painter and printmaker of Northern Europe, and he held the prestigious position of court painter to the electors of Saxony, the aristocratic rulers of an area that is today in eastern Germany. He was based in the town of Wittenberg, and he ran a large workshop there. He was a very versatile artist, so he painted large altarpieces and small portraits, but he was also in demand for mythological pictures and nudes, and that is the category into which our picture falls. In order to learn why this little angel is covered in bees, we need to take a good look at what is actually going on in this painting. It's not a Christian angel that we're looking at. In fact, it is Cupid, the Roman god of desire and attraction, and he's standing alongside his mother Venus, the Roman god of love. Well, they're standing next to an apple tree that is laden with fruit, and they are set in this beautiful and lavish landscape. Venus is naked, except for two golden necklaces and her large extravagant head, which is set with ostrich feathers. She makes her way to her son. She steps over a branch and holds another branch in her hand. And he is clearly in need of her help, as he has just stolen a piece of honeycomb from a hole in the tree trunk next to him. And he is now facing consequences of that foolhardy action. He is covered by a swarm of angry bees. And he has his mouth open in what we can only imagine must be a shriek of complaints about this rather dire situation. To find out more about the meaning of this picture, we need to turn our attention to the upper right corner, because there above the branches and against the brilliant blue sky is a Latin inscription consisting of 4 lines. And this inscription holds the key to the interpretation of the picture. It translates as, "Young Cupid was stealing honey from a hive when a bee stung the thief on the finger. So it is for us. The brief and fleeting pleasure we seek is mingled with sadness and brings us pain." So the painting depicts a morality tale. It is a witty warning of the effects of giving into temptation and informs us that transitory pleasure is mingled with sadness and pain. We now know that little Cupid is covered in bees because he stole some honey. And we know that Cranach painted this picture to teach us a moral lesson. But what is the source of this myth? And why did Cranach decide to depict this specific story? The short inscription and the subject of the painting are based on a classical poem called The Honey Thief. And this poem is attributed to the 3rd century Greek poet Theocritus. And examining this poem highlights the comical elements of the painting. Theocritus writes that after being stung by the bee, Cupid complains to Venus about how a creature so small can inflict such cruel, painful wounds. Venus laughs and responds that in fact Cupid himself is just like a bee. The love he spreads with his arrows can be as sweet as honey, but the stings of his arrows can equally be as sharp as the sting of a bee. And this is of course why it's funny, because Cupid, who usually inflicts pain, is now being called himself. At the time, works by classical authors such as Theocritus were of great interest to the scholars and humanists of Wittenberg, and they would often translate verses from Greek into Latin in order to show off their proficiency in both languages and their familiarity with the classics. Theocritus' Honey Thief was especially popular. At least 9 different versions of it were published between 1526 and 1530, which is around the exact same time that Cranach painted this picture. And we know that Cranach had access to the intellectual elite of Wittenberg. He was close friends with the famous reformer Martin Luther, as well as with the professor and humanist Melanchthon. And we also know that Cranach often collaborated with Wittenberg scholars. So it is quite likely that Cranach painted the honey thief as a result of his contacts with this scholarly community and their interest in this specific poem. Cranach's visualization of this topic became hugely popular itself. He and his workshop assistants produced at least 20 different versions of this subject between roughly 1526 and 1545, of which this is one of the earliest and finest examples. Note 2 of these versions are alike, which becomes evident when we compare this picture to another version of the same subject in the National Gallery's collection, which was painted in 1529. And not only is this picture much smaller, but Cranach made variations in the figure's poses and the background. He signed both paintings with his emblem, derived from his coat of arms. A little winged serpent with a ring in its mouth, and we can find it on the stone below Venus's feet in both paintings. And in the second painting, Cranach even added the date. But why was there such a demand for Cranach's paintings of the honey thief? Well, there are actually quite a few reasons for this. The first one is that it's an absolute feast for the eye. It's luscious with color, the figures are very charming, and in Cupid case, really cute. Wittenberg scholars and humanists must have loved Cranach's inventive visual response to this poem. This witty, moralistic and comical composition with almost theatrical figures. As a viewer, you can't help but be amused by the situation that Cupid has gotten himself into, and by Venus's smile and her telling look. I mean, it's almost as if she's about to shake her head at us or roll her eyes. The painting would not only have appealed to scholars, but also to nobles at the Saxon court, who were equally often interested in classical literature and other humanist subjects, and they would have particularly loved the landscape in which the figures are painted. So to their left are a stag and a hind in semi-darkness, while to their right is this crag with a castle on top of it against this blue sky which fades to white. And if you look even closer, you can find charming little details, such as 2 figures walking on the path up the crag, or the 2 swans in the water. As hunting was a favorite pastime of nobles at the court, this lavish landscape must surely have appealed to them. Another reason why Cranach's painting of the honey thief was so popular, this time especially to male viewers, is the fact that Venus, the goddess of love, is shown naked. Cranach has depicted her as an object of desire. He painted her as this idealized female beauty and placed her right in the center of the composition, and he contrasted her body by placing it against these dark foliage. By viewing the nude Venus as an object of temptation, it has even been suggested that the subject of the honey thief could be interpreted as an allegory of syphilis, a disease that was raging all across Europe at the time. Syphilis, like Cupid's sting of love, could indeed count as the sorrow and the pain after giving in to temptation, which is what the inscription of the painting warns us against. Such a reading is tempting, although admittedly impossible to prove without more concrete evidence. There is one more thing that could have contributed to the popularity of this composition. By depicting a woman naked under an apple tree, Cranach made a very deliberate reference to another story that warns of the dangers of giving in to temptation. That of Adam and Eve, who were made by God, lived in paradise in the Garden of Eden, and sinned by eating from the tree of knowledge. This connection becomes even more evident when we compare our painting with a picture, also by Cranach, of Adam and Eve in the Courtauld Gallery, which he painted around the same time as ours. In this painting, the figure of Eve makes a gesture identical to that of our Venus, while standing under a similar apple tree. Combining a secular subject with a religious reference might seem strange to us today, but at the time this was not uncommon, and at the Saxon court, mythological and religious images were often shown side by side. We do not know for whom Cranach painted this distinctive picture, but its high quality and its classical subject matter indicate that it must have been a wealthy and erudite patron, such as a humanist scholar or a noble at the court. Almost 500 years after Cranach painted it, this picture, with its witty subject matter, its beautiful landscape and its double layers of meaning, it still holds the power to captivate viewers to this very day. If you're interested in learning more about art history, click here or here and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.